Chapter 11. Elaine was reading a National Tatler article called "Filth in Your Bread" when 𝘈𝘁𝘳𝘵 came into the cafeteria. She had eaten only the filling in her tuna salad sandwich. Behind the red goggles, 𝘈𝘁𝘳's eyes zigged down the front page of the Tatler. Cover lines, in addition to "Filth in Your Bread," involved Elvis at Secret Love Retreat, exclusive pics, stunning breakthrough for cancer victims, and the big banner line, "Hannibal the Cannibal helps lawman, cops consult fiend in Tooth Fairy murders." He stood at the window absently, stirring his coffee until he heard Elaine get up. She dumped her tray in the trash container and was about to throw in the Tatler when 𝘈𝘁𝘳 touched her shoulder. "May I have that paper, Elaine?" "Sure, Mr. D. I just get it for the horoscopes." 𝘈𝘁𝘳 read it in his office with the door closed. Freddie Lowndes had two bylines in the same double-page center spread. The main story was a breathless reconstruction of the Jacoby and Leeds murders. Since the police had no divulgence into many of the specifics, Lowndes consulted his imagination for lucid details. 𝘈𝘁𝘳 found them banal. The sidebar was more interesting. Insane fiend consulted in mass murders by cop he tried to kill, by Freddie Lowndes. Baltimore, MD. Federal manhunters stymied in their search for the Tooth Fairy, psychopathic slayer of entire families in Birmingham and Atlanta, have turned to the most savage killer in captivity for help. Dr. Hannibal Lecter, whose unspeakable practices were reported in these pages 3 years ago, was consulted this week in his maximum security asylum cell by ace investigator William or Will Graham. Graham suffered a near-fatal slashing at Lecter's hands when he unmasked the mass murderer. He was brought back from early retirement to spearhead the hunt for the Tooth Fairy. What went on in this bizarre meeting of two mortal enemies? What was Graham after? "It takes one to know one," a high federal official told this reporter. He was referring to Lecter, known as Hannibal the Cannibal, who is both a psychiatrist and a mass murderer. Or was he referring to Graham? The Tatler has learned that Graham, former instructor in forensics at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, was once confined to a mental institution for a period of 4 weeks. Federal officials refused to say why they placed a man with a history of mental instability at the forefront of a desperate manhunt. The nature of Graham's mental problem was not revealed, but one former psychiatric worker called it deep depression. Garman Evans, a paraprofessional formerly employed at Bethesda Naval Hospital, said Graham was admitted to the psychiatric wing soon after he killed Jarrett Jacob Hobbs, the Minnesota Shrike. Graham shot Hobbs to death in 1975 ending Hobbs' 8-month reign of terror in Minneapolis. Evans said Graham was withdrawn and refused to eat or speak during the first weeks of his stay. Graham was never an FBI agent. Veteran observers attribute this to the Bureau's strict screening procedures designed to detect instability. Federal sources would reveal only that Graham originally worked in the FBI crime laboratory and was assisted to teaching duties at the FBI Academy after outstanding work, both in the laboratory and in the field, where he served as a quote-unquote special investigator. The Tattler learned that before his federal service, Graham was in the homicide division of the New Orleans Police Department, a post he left to attend graduate school in forensics at George Washington University. One New Orleans officer who served with Graham commented, "Well, you can call him retired, but the feds like to know he's around. It's like having a king snake under the house. They may not see much of him, but it's nice to know he's there to eat the moccasins." Dr. Lecter is confined for the rest of his life. If he ever dared sane, he will have to stand trial on 9 counts of first-degree murder. Don't be rude, Frigid. Don't be mean. Reading is my only solace. Don't take that from me. Yay. Sad, isn't it? No, it's okay. I just tease. But yeah, let me know. Do let me know if it ever becomes problematic. We all know it's possible. Lecter's attorney says the mass murderer spends his time writing useful articles for the scientific journals and has an quote-unquote ongoing dialogue by mail with some of the most respected figures in psychiatry. Dolarhyde stopped reading and looked at the pictures. There were 2 of them above the sidebar. One showed Lecter pinned against the side of a state trooper's car. The other was the picture of Will Graham taken by Freddie Lowndes outside the Baltimore State Hospital. A small photograph of Lowndes ran beside each of his bylines. Dolarhyde looked at the pictures for a long time. He ran the tip of his forefinger over them slowly, back and forth, his touch exquisitely sensitive to the rough newsprint. Ink left a smudge on his fingertip. He wet the smudge with his tongue and wiped it off with a Kleenex. Then he cut out the sidebar and put it in his pocket. On his way home from the plant, Dolarhyde bought toilet paper of the quick-dissolving kind, used in boats and campers, and a nasal inhaler. He felt good despite his hay fever. like many people who have undergone extensive rhinoplasty. 𝘈𝘁𝘻 had no hair in his nose, and hay fever plagued him. So did upper respiratory infections. When a stalled truck held him up for 10 minutes on the Missouri River Bridge to St. Charles, he sat patiently. His black van was carpeted, cool and quiet. Handel's wet music played on the stereo. He rippled his fingers on the steering wheel in time with the music and dabbed at his nose. 2 women in a convertible were in the lane beside him. They wore shorts and blouses tied across the midriff. 𝘈𝘁𝘻 looked down into the convertible from his van. They seemed tired and bored, squinting into the lowering sun. The woman on the passenger side had her head beside the seat, back and her feet on the dash. Her slumped posture made 2 creases across her bare stomach. 𝘈𝘁𝘻 could see a suck mark on the inside of her thigh. She caught him looking, sat up, and crossed her legs. He saw weary distaste in her face. She'd said something to the woman at the wheel. Both looked straight ahead. He knew they were talking about him. He was so glad it did not make him angry. Few things made him angry anymore. He knew that he was developing a becoming dignity. The music was very pleasant. The traffic in front of 𝘈𝘁𝘻 began to move. The lane beside him was still stalled. He looked forward to getting home. He tapped the wheel in time with the music and rolled down the window with his other hand. He hawked a big blob of green phlegm into the lap of the woman beside him, hitting her just beside the navel. Her curses sounded high and thin over the handle as he drove away. I'm sorry, that got me, that's terrible. Oh, I mean, gross. 𝘈𝘁𝘻's great ledger was at least 100 years old. Bound in black leather with brass corners, it was so heavy a sturdy machine table supported it in the locked closet at the top of the stairs. From the moment he saw it at the bankruptcy sale of an old St. Louis printing company, 𝘈𝘁𝘻 knew it should be his. Now, bathed in his kimono, he unlocked the closet and rolled it out. When the book was centered beneath the painting of the great red dragon, he settled himself in a chair and opened it. The smell of foxed paper rose to his face. Across the first page, in large letters, he had illuminated himself, were the words from Revelation, and there came a red dragon also. The first item in the book was the only one not neatly mounted. Loose between the pages was a yellowed photograph of 𝘈𝘁𝘻 as a small child, with his grandmother on the steps of the big house. He is holding to grandmother's skirt. Her arms are folded and her back is straight. 𝘈𝘁𝘳 turned past it. He ignored it as though it had been left there by mistake. There were many clippings in the ledger, the earliest ones about the disappearances of elderly women in St. Louis and Toledo. Pages between the clippings were covered with 𝘈𝘁𝘳's writing, black ink in a fine copperplate script, not unlike William Blake's own handwriting. Fastened in the margins, ragged bits of scalp tailored with tails of hair like comets pressed in God's scrapbook. The Jacoby clippings from Birmingham were there, along with film cartilages and slides set in pockets glued to the pages. So were stories of leads with film beside them. The term tooth fairy had not appeared in the press until Atlanta. The name was marked out in all the lead stories. Now 𝘈𝘁𝘳 did the same with his Tadler clipping, obliterating tooth fairy with angry slashes of a red marker pen. He turned to a new blank page in his ledger and trimmed the Tadler clipping to fit. Should Graham's picture go in? The words criminally insane carved in the stone above Graham offended 𝘈𝘁𝘳. He hated the sight of any place of confinement. Graham's face was closed to him. He set it aside for the time being. But Lecter. This was not a good picture of the doctor. 𝘈𝘁𝘳 had a better one, which he fetched from a box in his closet. It was published upon Lecter's committal and showed the fine eyes. Still, it was not satisfactory. In 𝘈𝘁𝘳's mind, Lecter's likeness should be the dark portrait of a Renaissance prince. For Lecter, alone among all men, might have the sensitivity and experience to understanding the glory, the majesty of 𝘈𝘁𝘳's becoming. 𝘈𝘁𝘳 felt that Lecter knew the unreality of the people who died to help you in these things, understood that they are not flesh, but light and air and color and quick sounds, quickly ended when you change them, like balloons of color bursting. That they are more important for the changing, more important than the lives they scramble after, pleading. 𝘈𝘁𝘳 bore screams as a sculptor bears dust from the beaten stone. Lecter was capable of understanding that blood and breath were only elements undergoing change to fuel his radiance, just as the source of light is burning. He would like to meet Lecter, talk and share with him, rejoice with him in their shared vision, be recognized by him as John the Baptist recognized the one who came after, sit on him as the dragon sat on 666 in Blake's Revelation series, and film his death as dying. He melded with the strength of the dragon. 𝘈𝘁𝘳 pulled on a new pair of rubber gloves and went to his desk. He unrolled and discarded the outer layer of the toilet paper he had bought. Then he unrolled a strip of 7 sheets and tore it off. Printing carefully on the tissue with his left hand, he wrote a letter to Lecter. Speech is never a reliable indicator of how a person writes. You never know. Dollarhide's speech was bent and pruned by disabilities real and imagined, and the difference between his speech and his writing was startling. Still, he found he could not say the most important things he felt. He wanted to hear from Lecter. He needed a personal response before he could tell Dr. Lecter the important things. How could he manage it? He rummaged through the box of Lecter's clippings, read them all again. Finally, a simple way occurred to him, and he wrote again. The letter seemed too diffident and shy when he read it over. He had signed it, Avid Fan. He brooded over the signature for several minutes. Avid Fan, indeed. His chin rose an imperious fraction. He put his gloved thumb in his mouth, removed his dentures, and placed them on the blotter. The upper plate was unusual. The teeth were normal, straight and white, but the pink acrylic upper part was a tortuous shape cast to fit the twists and fixtures of his gums. Attached to the plate was a soft plastic prosthesis with an orbiter on top, which helped him close off his soft palate in speech. He took a small case from his desk. It held another set of teeth. The upper casting was the same, but there was no prosthesis. The crooked teeth had dark stains between them and gave off a faint stench. They were identical to grandmother's teeth in the bedside glass downstairs. Dollarhide's nostrils flared at the odor. He opened his sunken smile and put them in place and wet them with his tongue. He folded the letter across the signature and bit hard on it. When he opened the letter again, the signature was enclosed in an oval bite mark, his notary seal, an imprimatur flecked with old blood.